Welcome and thank you for joining today's webcast, The Little JPEG That Could Hack Your Organization, with Marcus Murray, Cybersecurity Manager at TrueSec. You are also joined by Beyond Trust CTO Mark Mayfrey, who will commentate throughout the webinar and then run through a brief overview of Beyond Trust towards the end of the presentation, so be sure to stick around. I am Sarah, your host today, and before we dive into the webcast, I just wanted to touch on a few housekeeping items. First thing, all attendee lines are muted. However, in an effort to keep this interactive, we encourage you to ask your questions via the chat box in the GoToMeeting console. You should find that on the side of your screen. We will try to cover your questions in the order in which they were received at the end of the webinar during our Q&A time, so be sure to send those in. Also, today's session is being recorded, and as attendees, you will all receive the link to the recording via an email later this week or maybe early next week, just depending on how quickly we can get that out to you. So be on the lookout for that from an email from communications@Beyond Trust. Also, the recording will be available on beyondtrust.com later. So at this point, I'd like to turn the phone over to Marcus. Marcus, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to see what you have in store for us, so please take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. And thanks everybody for listening, and welcome to this session. One more housekeeping thing. If you have a screen that is resizable, make it as big as possible, because I'm going to do some command line stuff that may be a little bit difficult to see if your screen is too small. And that's all for the housekeeping thing. So let's get going with this session. If you never met me before, I am the team manager of a small elite team of people who do a lot of penetration testing and incident response and stuff like that. So we get to see a lot of things that is happening in the real world. And the demo I'm going to do, and this is going to be a completely live demo, is some experience from my guys and from the field. So I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that there is some value that you can bring home from this. And looking at the scenario, I'm going to explain everything we're going to do in advance, and this is the last slide we're going to use. After this, it's just going to be consoles. So we're going to be the attacker sitting on the internet. And of course, there are different ways that you can compromise an organization today. I mean, the traditional ones with physical access, you can reach the internal network. The most popular ones today, to be honest, would be either SQL injections or client-side exploitations that are very common. Like you get email attachments or things that are evil that can be used to compromise a client. I am going to show you another type of server-side vulnerabilities that are more common than you may think, because we don't talk so much about them. And it's the problem with file uploads. So when we do penetration testing, we always look for any place where you could potentially upload files. It could be anything from CVs to pictures to anything. And the example I'm doing here is actually from a government agency site where they had file upload vulnerability, and I'm going to show you how we utilize that. And not only how we compromised the initial web server, I'm also going to show you how you can walk your way down the path to compromise the entire environment. So I'm going to try to compromise the web server. After that, I'm going to go for backend resources, anything that I can potentially find. And ultimately, I'm going to try to compromise a domain controller. And it's kind of important to understand, even in mixed environments for Windows and Linux, when you own the domain controller, the Microsoft domain controller of a Microsoft domain, you usually own the entire infrastructure of that company. And that is true because even though you may have Linux servers, for example, you usually use Windows clients to connect to them and to authenticate, and you have your RSA keys and your username and password combinations stored on your clients or used live on your clients. So when you compromise the domain controller, you can always Trojanize and monitor the entire environment. So that's the end game, the domain controller. But in the real world, it's going to be 3 steps plus whatever is the ultimate goal. Get foothold on the network, expand influence, take the domain controller, and then, of course, do your dirty deed, whatever that is. So we're going to switch into the attack platform, and the attack platform is red. It's going to be easy to recognize, so I'm going to the attacker. And when I picked it, I can't see it anymore. That's kind of scary. Maybe you can see it, but I can't. So I'm going to see if I can pause and do this again. Check here. So I hope you can see this now. Is there a cycle coming up? Can somebody give me some feedback on that? Somebody from the team?
Looks great, Marcus.
Perfect, thank you. Because actually I couldn't see it myself. That was kind of scary. But now we're on again. Good. So this is a typical file upload function. We took this. I extracted this from the real application because I don't want to expose who the customer was, and of course I don't want to make it too difficult to understand. So basically, this is used to upload photos. In this case, it was profile photos for some user context in the user profile. And what you can do here is pretty straightforward. You can upload files or photos like this anonymous JPEG, for example. You can upload it, and then it was actually a preview button, so you could access the file, and that's pretty important because when you're trying to exploit an upload vulnerability, first of all, you want to somehow upload active content, something that would execute on the server. It could be client-side exploit, but in this case, you want to compromise the server. So step number one is to get the evil code up there. Step number two is to be able to find it. So a big flaw is usually when they store it in the file system of the server like they did in this case. That makes it so much easier. They could have stored references in a database or make it way more difficult to find. But here it was actually a link. And it makes sense because if you upload a profile photo, you're supposed to be able to see the photo. So you can probably get to it somehow. So I can upload photos. What would be the easiest thing in the world if you could upload? Well, it would be active content. And on a Microsoft Webserver, which this was in this case, it would be the best thing you could ever imagine would be some ASPX file, dynamic content, if this was a .NET web application running. So this is a typical, very minimalistic small shell. And what it does is pretty straightforward. It actually only opens up the cmd.exe process, and it will redirect input and output to the web page. So if I can somehow get this code up, that's all I need. And in the past, you could actually sometimes see really weak upload functions. You could actually sometimes just rename them, or maybe they were looking for JPEG, so you could probably do just JPEG like this and try to upload them. So let's try this for fun. So this is now not a JPEG file, but has the JPEG file extension, and I'm going to see if I can upload this one. Browse. And the shell.jpg, I think. No, that's not it. Am I in the wrong folder? Yes, I'm on the desktop, so let's upload from the desktop. Why not? So desktop, and here it is. So upload this file, and it says uploaded file is not an image. So there is something there that checks whether or not this is an image. So that's a problem for me. It's presenting a problem. I can't upload dynamic content just by renaming it. It needs to be an image. So the thought process here would be, is it possible somehow to make the application think it's an image, but then somehow embed active content? And what we came up with was a pretty neat trick, to be honest, and I'm going to show you what it's about. So in any JPEG file, there is a metadata, and you can use different tools to look at the metadata. So I'm going to use the EXIF tool, which is for EXIF extension metadata. So this is the TrueSec JPEG picture, and this is a normal file. Nothing strange about it. And the thing is, what if I could somehow put active content into some of the attributes so that it will execute on the server? That was the assumption that the guys in my team tried. And we can actually try another try another trick as well, just to see what happens. We can try to take the TrueSec or the anonymous file, if you will. So I'm going to go back to the pictures. I'm going to take the anonymous JPEG and just rename it. So this is still a picture, but now it has the extension of ASPX. So in the pictures folder, I'm going to upload this one just to see what happens. Browse into the pictures. And this is now it says ASPX, but it is a picture. We know that for a fact because we have changed the name and upload it. And this is interesting. It says this file uploaded successfully. Preview your profile photo here. And this is exactly what the application did. So basically, it somehow makes sure this is a picture, but it doesn't really check for file extension names. And it would just output it in HTML. So this is actually the picture information in ASCII code. And this is what it looks like. Not so beautiful. It's not everything, but this is the visible characters that you can see. So this is some kind of strange text representation of the picture. So the assumption is, could you somehow get active content to get here somewhere that will be interpreted by the web server as code? So this is what we're going to try. And it wasn't that difficult, actually. So using the exif tool, we can put, we try different variables, but in the comment field, there's actually no comment field here right now, but I can update it. So let's see if I do, for example, exif tool dash comment, and then equals, and then something, hello, and then put this into the TrueSec JPEG. I think I'm in pictures. I'm just going to rename it so I don't confuse myself. There is a TrueSec JPEG in pictures. TrueSec JPEG. There it is. I can actually update this. So if I run the exif tool again, I can see that I created this hello in the comment field of this picture. So what happens if I put active content in there instead? So I'm going to do the same thing, but instead I'm going to, in the comment field, I'm going to put the entire ASPX shell file and see if that works. I'm actually going to cut and paste it because it's going to take forever to write it. So I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't write this fast. It's edit, paste. Nope. Give me a second. Oh, no, I wrote it. Wasn't fast? So, TrueSec JPEG file is now updated. And if we look at the exif tool again, we now have a picture with a comment that is active code. Pretty neat. So what happens if we upload this file? That's the magic question, isn't it? So I'm just going to rename it to show you the two different alternatives. Or let's do this first. Let's just upload the TrueSec JPEG. This is the file, the picture with the active content in it. It's in the picture folder. It says TrueSec JPEG. So back to the upload function. Don't mess with me, my friend. And then we'll do TrueSec JPEG upload. Open. Upload this file. And it's a little slow, but that's just to annoy the presenter. It has nothing to do with you guys. And now we're going to preview the photo. And when you preview it, give it some time. It's one problem with hacking. You may stress the systems. But I'm just uploading files, so I'm going to give it a second. Do it again. So installing, it's going to restart it. See. JPEG. I'm not worried yet. It's just I'm going to give it some more time. Otherwise, I'm going to do this again. Sometimes it's hanging. This is the good thing about being an experienced presenter. Even though you are very annoyed, you can keep going. That's a good thing. I'm going to close the window and open up again and see if I have the reference here, because I was uploading before, so it probably remembers that the upload folder is here and the TrueSec.jpg is here. And I can get to it. Isn't it beautiful? Me and my colleague assigned. So it's there. It was just stalling a little bit. And maybe it's me being a bad web coder. Who knows? Anyhow, it is still a picture. This is actually the same file that I uploaded. Let's see what happens if I rename it. So it's still the same picture. Going back to this TrueSec JPEG, just rename it to aspx.aspx. Nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. Yes. So going to the upload function again. Of course, I'm going to cross my fingers this time. This is the picture with the comment information and with the aspx end file extension. I'm going to upload this one. It is uploaded. I'm going to click here and boom, there we go. This is still the text of the picture, somehow fuzzy, but there is something here that you didn't see before. And this is kind of interesting because this is actually a shell. So if I do ipconfig here, you will actually get the ipconfig information right here. Even though it's not nice, the output is not nice. That was because I wanted to make it as small as possible. We could clean this up, of course, but then the information in the comment field would be longer. But this is actually everything you need in order to execute code on this web server. So if you're really geeky, you would think this is pretty cool. I think it is, even though I've seen it before. So the next step would be to get somehow a nicer shell, because this is a shell. I can do anything here. I can do dir. I will get all the files from the system. I can do hostname. And anything I do, this is the DMZ100 computer. So I have code execution. I can see who I am, like who am I. And I'm running in the IS app pool account. So this is a modern system. But again, I'm executing code. I haven't compromised the entire system, but I have a user context of the app pool account, which is a very good starting point, if you will. So my next step would be to try to get a nicer hacking environment. So I'm going to move into Metasploit. And in Metasploit, I'm going to create an evil Trojan, if you will, or whatever you like to call it, remote access Trojan, Trojan. It's an interpreter or an agent. It has different names for different reasons. So I'm going to go to the system console, and I'm just going to run the MSF payload. And I'm just going to create an exe file using the X here and set it to phone home to the attacker IP address and the local port listening on the attacker. In a real scenario, I would probably proxy this through a web server. I would use encrypted HTTPS traffic and all that stuff. But this is just a demo. We don't have that much time. So I'm going to be pretty straightforward and just create a regular Trojan named 444.exe. And I'm going to put it in the web server folder of my small Moon Goose web server. That's another important thing. So I'm just going to run this command and create it and wait it out. And whenever it is done, I'm going to be able to make sure that it is hosted on my web server, my small mongoose thingy. So here's my mongoose container where I'm storing my little things. And as you can see, this is created as of right now. So even though I didn't get the feedback from Metasploit yet, it's here. So my next step would be to try to somehow get this binary on that system. So I'm sitting here on the attacker with the remote access to the target on the DMZ. The problem is this is a modern computer. They don't have the TFTP client account or the FTP client account anymore. They just don't exist on modern servers. So I need some kind of function that can download this 4444 file for me. And there are many ways to do this. My personal favorite is usually to use PowerShell, which is installed by default in all modern Windows platforms. I'm going to use another simple technique that I've been using forever, just because it's kind of nice for demo. It looks pretty cool. So I'm going to create an uploader. One thing that I can always pass through here is text. So I'm going to echo some text, and just to show you exactly what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up Notepad, because that small box is not so easy to see. I'm going to use the echo command to echo into the target command interpreter, and this is source code for a .NET application, and this is how easy it is to build a webelo uploader today. I'm going to instantiate the net web client, and I'm going to take the download file function, and it takes 2 arguments, from where to where. And then I'm just going to echo this into the temp folder of the target system and name it dl.cs. So this is all I'm going to do. So I'm going to take this and put it in here. I mean, writing this inside this UI is not nice. So I'm going to do this, execute, and then in order to make sure that it worked, I'm just going to do dir and list the content of the temp folder. And as you can see, hopefully, there is a dl.cs that it was created as of right now. So I can create files. And if you look closely, there is no dl.exe. So what I want to do is I want to take this C# file, this is the C# language, and I want to compile it into a binary file. And for that we need a compiler. And there is actually a built-in compiler into the .NET framework, which is also installed in any modern operating system. So, any modern Windows operating system. So I'm going to run another command. And I'm going to tell the compiler, I'm going to put this here as well so you can see it. I am more used to live presentations than webcasts. I hope you enjoy it. I'm just crossing my fingers because I can't see your faces.
So, hey, Marcus, this is Mark, and I'm able to talk, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's awesome.
Well, I have at least one fan. I'm really happy about that. Thank you,
Mark. You're big in California right now.
more than I could ever wish for. So, I'm on a schedule, Mark. Let me go. So, just kidding. The default place, I mean, I can browse the file system, so I will find this, but this is the default location of the CSC, the compiler built into Windows. And it takes 2 syntaxes. It's going to output into this exe file, and it's going to use this source file. So I'm just going to copy this into my small hacker shell here. Control V. And again, there are more sophisticated ways to do this to circumvent, all the security mechanisms, but I still think this is kind of cool. So dir temp again, and execute. And as you can see now, I'm crossing my fingers, hope to die. There is the dl.cs, and here is the dl.exe file. So I actually created a binary file on that system. So if I only know how to write my own applications, or if I have the source code, I can use this technique to put all my evil files up on that system. Kind of neat. But again, I'm going to use the uploader for different things. So I'm going to use this to upload the 444.exe. But before I do that, I need to have a listener on the attack side. So I'm going to fire up Metasploit. And I'm going to make Metasploit listen to any hacked computer phoning home. And the easiest way to do this is to use the multihandler function. That will listen to different, any kind of Meterpreter calling home, actually. So I'm going to save some time, I'm going to paste some commands in here. So I'm going to use the multihandler. I'm going to set the payload to be Windows. Sorry, this is Linux. Meterpreter, Windows Meterpreter, and reverse TCP. There you go. So now it's waiting for reverse TCP, and I'm going to set the local host. So who's the listener in this case? Going to be 10.10.10.10, and the L port. I don't think you can imagine how easy it is to mistype when you have an audience. So I'm crossing my fingers and doing everything right. And then I can do show options, just to make sure that the settings looks okay. Show options. And I can see that it's listening to this and this, and it looks fine. So now I'm just going to do export. So this is now setting up the multi-handler, listening for anyone who is hacked and phoning home to the attacker. So I'm still on the red attacker on the internet, waiting for connections. Now all I need to do is to upload that 444 file to the target and execute it. If I do that, then I have a much nicer shell. And I'm realizing time is flying, so I'm going to be really fast here. Back to this guy. And I'm going to use the deal.exe. I'm going to cut and paste this again, and I'm going to show it to you. So this is the deal.exe. Run this from the temp folder. Go to this website and download this file and put it in the temp and name it 444.exe. So this is what I'm going to run. And here we go. Paste. And again, I hate this UI. It's not very nice, but it really gives me everything I need in order to do this. So dear temp again to get some feedback. And as you can hopefully see someplace, there is something called 444.exe, newly created. So all I need to do now is to execute this file. So I'm going to do temp, and then tell it to execute 444.exe. Backslash 4444.exe. That could have been a mistake. So before I do that, I'm going to go here and show you that it's now waiting for connections, and I'm going to run this, and I'm going to cross my fingers that it works. So execute. And you can see feedback already. Sending stager, Meterpreter session 1 open. And this is the Meterpreter. So now I can do a lot of things. I can do get UID, and I can see that I am now the Apple account again, but I have a way nicer environment. If I run help here, I can see that there are a lot of different things I can do within Metasploit. So what I want to do? Well, I'm going to be straightforward. I'm just going to jump to trying to compromise the domain in 5-10 minutes before I get kicked out of this demo. So I'm going to get into shell. And I know I have low privs. If I was an admin, I would try to steal tokens or do password hash extraction and stuff. And I'm just going to move into shell. And this is a normal command console in the system. I'm going to go back to the root. And I know this is a web server. So if I go to cd inetpub, and I go to the www root, cd www root, this is where you usually store all your web applications. So what I'm looking for is some information that could probably take me to a SQL server. Because usually web applications are web servers. They connect to backend SQL servers. And I'm usually looking for things that could have been forgotten because they may have things in clear text. So there is a BAK directory there, cd BAK, and dir, and login ASPX old. I'm just guessing. Who knows? Maybe it works. So I'm going to do type, and I'm going to type the content of this file. And normally you could do find string or some command to look for some use information that you know about, maybe SA accounts and stuff, but I'm going to do this manually. Just go through this. This seems like source code to something. And here we go. This is misspelled. It's crazy, something old, maybe didn't work for them, but it gives me the information that the 10.10.10.110, which is an internal IP address, I mean, this is just my virtual environment, but you would be aware of that, has an SA account with a password that says a strong SA password. I have actually found this password many times at customer sites. It's so funny because when you read the SQL Server manual, it actually says type a strong SA password just like this. So some people take it literally. It's kind of lame, funny, but still, that's the way it is. So as the hacker, I'm going to record this stuff, and I'm going to use this. So I'm going to leave the shell, drop the shell, exit. I know that IP address and everything. So I'm actually going to background this interaction I have using a command called background. Oops. And then I'm going to use, oops, sorry, misspelled. Then I'm going to use the information I have and going to try to use Metadata to connect to that web server. And again, to save some time, I'm going to cut and paste stuff in here. So I'm going to use the MS SQL payload. I'm going to cut and paste directly. Paste. So I'm setting it to use the built-in Metadata SQL Server connection tool, if you will. And I'm going to tell it whenever I'm successful using it, I am going to do the reverse TCP back to my multi-handler again to get another Meterpreter session. And I'm going to give it the same information I did before. I'm going to paste in the local host address of that listener. I'm going to set the local port to 444. Everything the same, basically the same I did last time. And I'm also going to tell it who to target. So this is where I set the R host, the SQL Server that I found in that configuration file. So I'm going to tell it to target 110. And then I need to give it the information I have, which is the password, which will try the SA account automatically. So paste, set the strong SA password. And all I need to do now, I know who to target. I know the username is, I'm going to try SA, and which is default. And I know a strong SA password may work. So exploit. And I'm starting handler. There's something happening. This is a stage here. It's actually using the SQL protocol to put stuff into the SQL Server database and then create a VB script and then actually execute that script on the target. So it will break out of the operating system of the SQL Server. So break out from the SQL application into the operating system. That's more correct. So hopefully I'm going to get a new shell. Session 2 open. So if I do a hostname now, sorry, get UID, I can see I'm now system. This SQL Server is an internal server probably. It's running in system context. So I really compromised a true SQL Server somewhere in that network, which is really, really nice. So what I need to do now is to find out some more about this system. So I'm actually going to use the shell again. And I'm just going to, I can do, for example, ipconfig /all. And I can see that this is 110 like I suspected. It has a DNS server of 100. So this, in any internal network environment, this will be a domain controller. So the 100 is probably the domain controller. I can also see that the DNS suffix is etheret.internal, so this is probably the domain name of that domain. Use information, so I'm going to try to target that domain controller. And one thing that people usually do is they usually, when they log on to administer SQL servers, internal resources, they're using high-priv accounts that can be reused. Sometimes you need to jump between different before you obtain domain admin logon. But in this case, I'm thinking I may be lucky. So I'm going to see who is logged on, and I'm going to do that by using this command. I'm going to exit the shell, and I'm going to use the PS to see what processes are running on this system. And as you can see, there are a lot of processes, but some of them are started under the context min DADM in the iterate domain. So this could be the domain admin. So let's try. I'm going to try to steal the token. I'm going to steal the authentication, the authorization of that process, so I can become that process and do whatever that process is allowed to do. So I'm going to try to steal the token, steal underscore token, and I'm going to steal 2684, which is this one running Explorer under the admin min DADM context. And it's kind of funny when you are in customer sites doing penetration tests. They usually name admin accounts with A or something, and DADM, that tells me it could be a domain admin. So with this, I'm going to go back to shell. Now I am min DADM. I'm going to open up a shell again, and I'm going to try net use to that 10.10.10.100, which is the domain controller. And just to make sure I am admin, I'm going to mount the hard drive, the $C. If you can ever mount the hard drive of the system, you have compromised it completely. Then you can do anything. So enter, and fail to spawn shell. This is not what you want to show. Damn. Let's see what happened or didn't happen. Because to be honest, I have the self-confidence of knowing I know I did it right. Let's see again. Who am I? I am not the guy. Ah, didn't I steal the token? Let's see, exit. This is the nice finale, so I'm a little bit annoyed now, but what can you do? Get UID. Somehow this malfunctioned, of course. I'm going to do a PS again. I'm going to try to steal another token. I mean, this is, again, this is not the built-in functionality that is supposed to be working. This is the stuff you do as a hacker, so you're circumventing the normal features. Let's see what could possibly be a more stable function. Maybe it's 1084, who knows. Steal underscore token 1084. Ah, there's something wrong, but again, I'm going to have to give up here, but just to prove to you that it actually, the technique per se works, I'm just going to go back and remind you that when I did this steal token, let's see if I can find it, I stole the token of the domain admin guy, and for some reason I didn't get the shell to work. I hate this because I always want to succeed in my demos, but I think trying to find a problem here could take time and I need to restart resources. But this is token stealing. So when you steal the token, I should be able to connect, and this would compromise the entire domain. So I'm going to go back to the original slide and show you. Let's see.
Marcus, we're getting a bunch of comments in saying that it's 1804, not 1084, if that helps you.
Oh, that could help me. Now I left this, let's see if we can make this happen. Okay, I'm going to pause this, go back, try again, who knows. No, it's not showing the applications. Stop. I'm going to give it a shot, who knows. But you're going to have to remember what you just said, because I'm busy trying to get the right focus here. But I'm crossing my fingers. So we're back here. Somebody wanted to give me a hint. I'm going to go back and do the, see if I can make this happen. Again, the problem is when you start to steal tokens and stuff, you kind of confuse the system here. So let's see if we can do drop tokens for starters. So now I'm back to where I was in the beginning. I'm going to do PS again. This is actually the Explorer. That should work, but we can try something else. It could be anything. 2568. I'm cut and pasting now, so I'm not going to do 2568. I'm going to try another one. That's for you guys, since you wanted to help me out. I appreciate that. Steal_token. And then I'm going to paste it in there. So this is something. And again, I stole the token, so I can steal the token. And with this context, since I know this is a domain admin, I should be able to connect. So I'm going to shell again. And I'm going to do a net use //10.10.10.100, which was the domain controller, and then try to mount the $, and cross my fingers, and it completed successfully. Thank you so much for making me try it again, because I feel so much better. I'm going to be happier the entire evening. So whoever came up with that feedback and made me redo it, thank you so much. So now we actually compromise the domain controller, and from this point of view, we can do anything. We can upload domain admin tools, and we can just start to manage this domain controller like it was our own. But we're out of time, so we're not going to be able to do that. So hopefully you enjoyed this demo. I'm going to just sum it up by going back to the original picture with the drawing and show you that we did all these steps. We went from the attacker down to the web server, uploaded the file. We found some information that could be used to connect to a SQL Server. And a good take-home here is the only thing we needed was access through the firewall with port 1433, because it used the SQL connection for the entire thing. And then from there, we could find a domain admin logon and compromise the domain controller. Now it's up to us. Now we can do anything. So I hope you enjoyed this demo. And I'm going to, if you have any questions and stuff, you can probably post them, and we're going to somehow answer them either now or later after this entire session. And I'm handing over to Mark from Beyond Trust to continue the session. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, man. That was absolutely awesome. And glad it worked out for you in the last part there too. I'm definitely not going to do many slides here, because I think after a presentation like that, that's the last thing anybody wants to see. So I just wanted to take a couple quick minutes just to tell you a little bit about Beyond Trust. But I think one of the things I liked most about the presentation that we just saw, and really more so the demo that we just saw, is just how real world it is. And can't emphasize that enough, that when you see all the headlines and kind of what gets talked about so much in security about APT this and that and everything else, the vast majority of how hacks are actually taking place, how companies are actually being compromised. I mean, you just saw one of the most real world examples of exactly that, of essentially what you're really facing day in and day out. And I think one of the things that also stood out for me the most, and Mark showed very well, is that the anatomy of most attacks starts off with the very first stage of kind of getting a foothold, and that could be through a web-based attack such as what was shown. That could be through outdated client application software like Adobe and an exploit against that. But whatever way the foothold is kind of done through whatever different type of vulnerability, once somebody has access inside your environment and they try to move laterally to kind of steal data, go after systems, etc. Typically, that's the point where privileges get involved, user accounts, how do you actually protect from those things. And so when you look at kind of what we focus on as a company at Beyond Trust, is really to try to bring the world of vulnerabilities and privileges together. We do that through our line of vulnerability management products called Retina, and our line of privilege and identity management products, PowerBroker. And all of this feeds up to one central console, so that essentially you can have the sort of reporting that is actually needed to be able to look at how people can potentially break into your environment, and then most importantly, how they can move laterally through the environment. And looking at PowerBroker, for example, it's not just on the end of actual, making sure that users can kind of run as non-administrators. It's one of the challenges is, removing administrative rights in an environment is a straightforward process until you have a legacy application that needs some sort of administrator type of access. And so one of the things that we facilitate is being able to have granular controls over not just which users have administrative level access, but more importantly, which individual applications. And that sort of granular aspect can kind of reduce your attack surface in the ways that somebody could potentially leverage your systems. And then, of course, we go from there into things like password safe technology, so that you're getting out of the, what we see all too often of passwords showing up in spreadsheets, passwords being stored in different types of databases, and a whole variety of things where they kind of shouldn't be. And more importantly, a lot of times where passwords are shared amongst an organization, rather than having a good audit control mechanism and being able to check out passwords, being able to expire them in a more rapid way, being able to provide users with authenticated sessions over RDP, SSH, without the users actually ever seeing the password themselves, things of that nature. And then lastly, as I mentioned, and I think also very relevant to some of what we just saw, is what we do from a vulnerability management perspective, as far as actually being able to identify, what are the different ways that somebody could potentially break in, what does your actual attack surface look like, whether it's based on, infrastructure, desktop servers, and then, of course, even integrating with different cloud providers like Amazon and so forth. And that's what we do from a retina vulnerability management perspective. And like I said, keep it short. I don't think there's anything else to be done after that demo, but we'd definitely love to hear from you. And just wanted to say thank you again to Marcus. That was very, very cool.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us. I'll give it back to you, Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks, Marcus. Real quick, you guys, before you jump off, I'm just launching a quick poll. If you would like to be contacted with more information about our privilege and vulnerability management solutions, I'm going to leave that up. Please answer yes or no. Don't worry, you won't hurt my feelings if you say no, although I might cry later when I get off the phone. No, but we have a couple of questions that came in, so I'm going to go ahead and just run through those. I think most of them are for you, Marcus, so let's go ahead and do that. First one, why do you have to upload the dl.cs file, then compile it? Why can't you just write the text of the binary directly to a file called dl.exe?
It's a very good question, actually, but when you compile a binary, it will actually generate non-readable characters that will not be ASCII. So if you would do that, you will actually lose parts of the file and it would break. So it just doesn't work that way. It's a text-based protocol, the web protocol, so it will only allow for ASCII characters to go through that pipe, if you will. So that's the reason. But again, you still have a good point, because I wouldn't have to upload an exe file, or I wouldn't have to upload source code and then compile it. For example, I could use PowerShell directly. So PowerShell is a very proficient language, and PowerShell can be used to access functions of the entire .NET framework. You can actually put shell code and everything to execute within the context of PowerShell. And another thing that is good to know is that when you do that, antivirus applications will have a very hard time to detect anything that is running within the PowerShell process. So even though you run .NET code within the PowerShell process, it will actually be compiled in runtime to execute, but it's like a sandbox, so you can't see it within the PowerShell process. So you really need to be proactive here. You should not allow an attacker under any circumstance to be able to execute stuff on your web servers.
And maybe one more that I'll add, beyond PowerShell, there's another good native way of downloading a file is you can actually use the bits-admin tool, which comes standard on most versions of Windows, most modern versions. And bits-admin is essentially the background intelligence transfer service that Windows Update uses. And so kind of with a one-shot command line there, you can actually go directly grab a URL. It handles all the proxies, handles everything else, and you're kind of assured that it's going to work for download in the sense that it's the same mechanism that Windows uses. So I think the thing there is there's definitely a lot of ways, and I personally thought the way that you did was pretty cool. I hadn't really seen that before.
Exactly. And you're absolutely right. Bits-admin is good, and there are so many examples. One thing that we used to do also, there's a tool called circutil that is built into Windows. It can decode and encode, so you can actually encode your text or binary, encode the binary into text, and then you can use the circutil to decode it. So there are so many different techniques.
Nice.
Bits-admin is a really good one, though, because it's very straightforward. So it's a good example. Thank you.
question. So far, I've been seeing the presentations about Microsoft Windows ENV. Does this also apply to Unix ENV?
Absolutely. When it comes to file upload vulnerabilities, it is the exact same problems, just, I mean, differently implemented. It's not going to be SPX, it's going to be PHP or whatever language you're using. So we have the same issues. I mean, if you don't have solid code, then you can probably circumvent the security features of the upload filters. But there is a big difference when it comes to the lateral movements. It really depends on whether or not you have single sign-on. So if this would be a pure Linux environment and they had a complete separation, there would be no domain controller. But again, they also need to somehow be efficient when they administer things. So there would probably be similar features, so they could actually have a Kerberos realm anyway. So yeah, I think the same problems apply. You can, again, do the same thing in Windows. You could have everything standalone, like you usually have in Unix. You just wouldn't be able to administer it. So it's not a Windows problem. They just appear differently.
Marcus, what about an SQL server that is only connected to the web server and can't be accessed via the web?
Well, in this case, I mean, if you have a web server with a backend database, it needs to connect, and it will only connect over the SQL Server protocol. So in this example, I used the web server's ability to connect back to the SQL Server. So what Metasploit did, and we actually have our own internal tools that does this as well, it just sets up a SQL connection. And then using that SQL connection, it will run SQL commands executing inside the SQL Server application to put things in a database that can later be transferred and changed into executable code on the operating system. The trick is you need somehow of a weak configuration in the SQL Server that allows you to break out from the SQL application into the operating system. And the most traditional one is to use the XPC and D shell store procedure. But there are other store procedures like SPO or create and lots of others that you can utilize. In the Linux world, in MySQL world, then you usually try file uploads actually and other techniques because you don't have similar store procedures in MySQL, for example. But there are different ways to do it. And again, we don't need the web server to go to the internal network or anything using any protocol. It's all you need is that SQL connection. If I understood the question correctly.
A comment came in which I thought was funny. Thank you so much for scaring the crap out of me.
Well, I am so sorry for that. I just wanted to encourage you to buy some product from my friendly company Beyond Trust. That's all.
Another question for you, Marcus. How much of the exploit is due to the nature of the upload page? Would a more robust upload function prevent this?
Yes. Yes, a more robust upload function would definitely prevent this. The thing is that when we do penetration tests, even today, I mean, there are so many good developers that doesn't really understand secure coding and good filtering. And the modern framework or frameworks, the Java frameworks, the .NET frameworks, they help you a lot when it comes to security. But still people make, I mean, they still code the way they always done, so they tend to want to create their own security features, if you will, and sometimes they're really weak. So I would say somewhere between 50 to 70% of the times we do external penetration testing on web applications, we manage to execute code on the underlying operating system. And that is a scary number, actually. Again, we're trained professionals, but we see vulnerabilities sometimes that can even be exploited using automated tools, which is really scary today, still today.
Time for just one more question, then we're going to wrap it up. Would removing PowerShell from the web server minimize this type of attack?
Yes, but it would also break a lot of functionality. So I wouldn't recommend that. I think, again, like me and Mark commented, there are so many different ways of doing it, and PowerShell is the way of the future to administer servers in the Microsoft environment. So you need to be proactive. The problem is to get the bad guy on your system. when he can execute code on your system, he will use any functionality. And again, if you want to take away PowerShell, you should take away VBScript, JavaScript. I mean, there are so many things you need to take out. It wouldn't be a functional server anymore. And the same thing counts for Linux or anything. I mean, you can't just take away, you know, anything that can execute code. It's about being proactive.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up now. Thank you all for your great questions and comments. They were pretty funny, so I'll make sure that Marcus sees all of those. There was something about Swedish chocolates, I don't know, in there, so we'll make sure Marcus can see all of those. And thanks again, Marcus, for taking us through that. It was very insightful, and I think everybody really enjoyed it. I'm just going to close the poll here and then just go ahead and wrap it up. So thanks again for everybody for joining us today and taking an hour out of your day to participate and to view this presentation. It's always nice to have you guys join us. So thanks again. Thanks, Mark Mayfrey, for being a part of it. And we hope to do another webinar with Mark and Marcus again. So have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.